He's the founder and CEO of Humanitarian Aid International, very well known in our circle here. I think most of us know him very well. And I wanted to him to share some of the struggles in terms of what is his experience in the sector. Really, as the partner, and SRNL, you talked about, the NGOs on the ground and partners and how they experience some of these things. So Sudhanshu has been in the sector for many years, so 32 years or more, and really has been working with different types of organizations, faith-based, international organizations, and now he obviously has his own NGO, but very well versed in all the discussions on localization, and plays a very a real advocate, and very passionate. And so I would like to hand over to you, Sudhanshu. Please share with us your perspectives.
Thank you very much, Smriti. And my gray hair indicates that I've spent my life in this sector, 32 years, you rightly said. And now I realize that, yes, HAI is slightly more than 4-year-old organization, so not very old. But now I realize that this organization was created as a reaction to the discrimination which I faced throughout my career. I didn't realize that acutely that time, but now when this colonization, decolonization is a hot topic, I realized that it was also one of the factors to establish this organization. Let me share, in my 32 career spanning 32 years, I have faced discrimination and shocks many times. The first shock, which I remember vividly, was when I was participating in a meeting in Nepal. It was a coordination meeting, and there were approximately 100 participants. Out of those 100, 80 were Nepalese and 20 were expatriates of fair color. And just, it's anyone's guess who was talking and in which language they were talking. So it was all these 20% people, expatriates, talking in fabulous, flawless English about the problems of Nepal, including democracy and elections. And 80% people who knew the better about all these things, they're keeping silent because they felt inferior to these 20%. That was the first shock I remember. And then mostly I worked when I was into jobs. Now I work. When I was into jobs, mostly I worked with international organizations and particularly faith-based organizations. And there also I faced discrimination throughout, based on my religion, based on my skin color, based on my nationality. So however much I worked, my organizations grew because of my contribution. I didn't. And I saw my European colleagues with far less experience growing much faster and becoming my supervisors because of my efforts. And I was not eligible to become their boss because I was not a white European. No? And that time I remember one of my European colleagues made a very, very powerful statement and said that the best life is when you earn the salary of first world, but live in the third world. That's the perfect life. And yes, and that was such a true, right statement. And I remember one of my bosses, when she landed up in India, decided to live in a farmhouse, and the rent of that farmhouse was much more than the salaries of all the nationals put together. That's decolonization. Before I move on, let me very quickly I'm from a country which was colonized for centuries. No? What is the standard definition of colonization of that time? And it says, and it is, I have taken it from Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Colonialism is a practice of domination which involves the subjugation of one people to another. That's of the colonial past. Now, if you see in current context, in a modern sense, colonialism is a general description of political, economic, and intellectual subjection of a non-European society. So, if you see, if we were colonized by colonial powers that time, we continue being colonized by INGOs now. when we established Hive, we thought we are getting liberated, but no, we are not liberated in our own country, because we have all the INGOs present through their country offices, which are capturing the resources. A few things about the colonial past. Vasco da Gama and Columbus did the great service to colonial powers by finding out sea routes, and that facilitated the growing Europe, which was changing during the Industrial Revolution. They were looking for colonies. They found it in Southeast Asia and South Asia. India became the most preferred country, where we have British, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and whatnot. All of them tried, and eventually British succeeded to capture most of the country. And with the same we see now, all these European countries, INGOs from these countries are making the same efforts. Who captures how much of resource base in India? What has changed? During that time, Amartya Sen, if you remember, he got Nobel Prize for this when he said it's a lack of democracy which causes famine. And India saw a series of famines during that during the colonial rules. And in one which occurred in 1770, 1 million people died. And the last one was in 1943, when the Second World War was going on, and 3 million people died. Why? India had enough food even at that point in time. But the colonial powers were taking our food and medical aid to supply to soldiers who were well supplied even that point in time. And when Winston Churchill was informed about this, he couldn't care less. He said, so what? It's Indians who have to be blamed because they breed like rabbits. And the second reaction of Churchill was, oh, so hasn't Gandhi died yet? So that was it. So they couldn't care less. And the same thing, what has changed from that time to now? I was just going through the Global Humanitarian Overview, which was released only 1 week ago. Now in 2021, 235.4 million people will be in the need of humanitarian aid. Out of that, 159.9 million people have been planned to be provided aid, for which $35.1 billion will be required. And just see, in 2020, against 235 million in 2021, 167 people required aid. Just see the significant growth in the number. Despite this, having this well-oiled machinery in place to serve to the people affected in crisis. 34 people have been planned in the GHO to receive aid next year. All of these countries are facing protected crises. 11 countries will be requiring more than $1 billion aid. All require year after year the same amount of fund. Despite having a system in place, so many INGOs in place, we are not able to resolve the crisis. And why? Maybe because we have created such an expensive system that humanitarian aid is largely required to sustain that system, instead of catering to the population in need. And that has to be required. I know I'm running, I have only 1-2 minutes left, and I can see restlessness in Smriti. So I'll be very quick now. During colonial power, there were two key features of this colonization. One was economic exploitation, and second was religious expansion. And both we see even now through this current aid system. Economic resources are plundered even in our countries. However much you say that you are changing your strategies, but you are expanding your fundraising base in our countries. You are marginalizing us in our countries. You are denying us our space. You continue creating your frameworks through that angle. You are viewing us, your due diligence, everything. And that's why, if now you also say shrinking space, the space is shrinking because our governments try to control the mismanagement which you create through your practices. And what happens? We local organizations face the consequences of that. I would stop by saying that if you want really to decolonize, if you're really anti-racist, just do one thing instead of working on policy documents. Close down your offices from our countries. That will be the biggest thing you will do, the service you will do to us. I stop now. I know I have been provocative enough. So before Smriti kicks me out, I should stop.